Assalamu alaikum, everybody. How are you guys doing? I hope you're fantastic. Right. Welcome to another episode of Conversation with me. My name is Yusha Ishaq. I'm a health and fitness behavior change coach. I work with did I say amazing women from all over the globe, helping them achieve their health and fitness goals through the lens of behavior change. Now, today has been an interesting day where conversations around emotional eating started. And honestly, I feel so blessed, subhanallah, to be in a position to have conversations with busy moms, with busy women day in, day out, just helping them achieve their health and wellness goals, right? And one thing that keeps creeping up the is that more and more of us are struggling with emotional eating. More and more of us are struggling. And it got me curious as to why. Why are we seeing more of this behavior, of this pattern of behavior? Because emotional eating is a pattern of behavior, right? But before I continue, I wanted to kind of explain something, right? Something that's important in order for you to understand where I'm coming from. Now, human beings are creatures of habit, right? We like to do things the same way, right? We like to do things in a way that is certain, in a way that is familiar, right? Now, obviously, these habits that we're building over time, right? And the reason we become habitual is just because the brain uses a lot of power, uses a lot of energy, it burns a lot of calories, right? Even though it's such a small part of it, but it actually burns a lot of calories. Now, as a means for it to be efficient and to preserve energy, it looks at the things that you do more all the time and it says, you know what, Yusra, you do this thing often. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it back into subconscious mind so that that habit becomes automatic. So you don't have to think about doing it. So you don't have to waste energy thinking about taking that action. I'm going to make it really easy for you to just act without thinking. And that is what emotional eating is, right? It's a reaction, right, to life. It's a response to life. Now, one of the reasons, this is how I'm seeing it from my experience as to why so many of us are struggling with this now is in two folds. Number one, life is stressful. Subhanallah, we are like this generation is challenged. I know every generation has a different challenge, right? But this generation is so challenged in all the ways. We are challenged physically, we are challenged emotionally, we are challenged spiritually, right? And when we don't have strategies to cope with those challenges, we revert back to patterns of behaviors that we are used to. Now, have a think about this. When you're small and you're upset, right? What did your parents do? Did they say, hey, here's a piece of chicken, go eat, it's going to make you feel better? Or did they say, you know what, here's a chocolate bar. Oh, poor baby, it's going to make you feel better. Or go have some soda. Or here's a packet of crisps, right? So from such a small age, we are used to using food for comfort. Now, on the other side of the coin is that we know from studies have shown that foods that are high in sugar, high in salt, they light up the reward system in our brain. So now there's two things. Number one, it's a habit that we are used to food as a coping mechanism because it's what happens, when we're small and we grow up that way. And secondly, this food actually light up the reward centers of our brain. So they give us that temporarily momentary relief from whatever stress that we are feeling, from whatever emotions that we may be going through, right? Now, because life is stressful, and the only way that we know how to cope with stress is to use food, right? That is what is happening, right? And what makes that even hard is what makes us to be able to engage in this behavior a lot more is that access to food is so easy these days. You don't have to get up from your sofa. You can just call a takeaway. Ultra processed food, so your crisps, your cake, your cookies are much cheaper than wholesome foods. So our access to food is so easy. So now on this end of the spectrum, our stress level is high. On the other side of the scale, access to food is easy. So what you tend to find, hey, I am really stressed. Life is really challenging me right now. Kids are really challenging me right now. X, Y, Z. Oh, I know what to do. I can go and eat. Because when I'm eating, I'm not feeling, I'm not thinking, I'm getting that temporary sort of pleasure, even though I know it's going to suck in the next 5 minutes. But right now, I'm not feeling anything. I'm just eating. So we hold on to that food, right? We hold on to it. Why? Because it's the only coping mechanism that we know. It's the only coping mechanism that we've adapted to. It's the only coping mechanism that we grew up with. And that is a pattern of behavior. Right? Now, the mistake that I see people do every single time when they're engaging in this pattern of behavior is, so they emotionally eat, and automatically you're going to gain weight because you're not eating because you're hungry. You're not eating because of physiological hunger. You're eating because you're trying to fulfill an emotional need. You think food is going to fulfill that need, but it's not. So what you tend to find is those people who emotionally eat, they can eat, they can eat, they can eat, they can eat, and it feels like this bottomless pit that you can't fill up because you're not hungry. You're not physically hungry. You're emotionally hungry. Right? And food isn't going to solve that problem. Food isn't going to satiate you, but you use food as a means to satiate you because you think that's what's going to work, right? Because it's the only thing that you know. So we tend to find people who emotionally eat end up being overweight or obese. So now you emotionally eat, you look at yourself and like, oh my God, I am huge, I've gained weight. Your next move is, oh, you know what, I'm going to cut out sugar, I'm going to cut out cakes, I'm going to cut out this, I'm going to cut out that. So people then, because it freaks them out how much weight they've gained, they go and cut out all of these things, right? They can do that for a day or two or a week or even 2 weeks, but eventually their brain catches up to them. Because remember, it has nothing to do with hunger. It has nothing to do with the food. It's what you use the food for. So you can hold off for a few days to not have that cake or that cookie or to cut out sugar, right? But then eventually you stop and you binge on that food item even more because it's like, oh my God, I've missed you so much. Why did I ever think I could live without you? Right? What you restrict will always persist. So now this person is on this never-ending cycle of binge restrict, binge restrict, binge restrict, not realizing that food is not the problem. Food was never the problem in the first place. It's what you used food for. That was the problem in the first place. You used food as a means to cope with your emotions. You use food as a means to cope with the stresses of life. But that was never going to work. Right? So one of the things that I do when someone struggles with emotionally eating, we don't even really touch things like weight loss. We don't even, one of the worst things that you can do when you're struggling with emotionally eating is cut out of food groups, because people who emotionally eat often have a very, very poor relationship with food. Poor relationship with food, because often they have this black and white line about food. They label food as good, bad, right? It's clean food, it's dirty. It's a cheat meal, it's a healthy meal. So for them, what tends to happen is when they're going to binge, they're not binging on the clean food. They binge on the bad food. It's the cakes and the cookies and all of those things. And because that's the bad food, after the binge, the guilt kicks in. Oh my God, why do I always do this? X, Y, Z, and they feel really bad about that. And to make themselves feel better about the binge, what do? They go eat some more. So one of the issues that people who emotionally eat, what they need to do is forget the food. First, heal your relationship with food. You have to get to a point where a cake is just a cake. I can choose to have it or I can choose not to have it. And either choice is okay. A burger is just a burger. I can choose to have it or I can choose not to have it. A packet of crisps is a packet of crisps. No big deal. It's neither clean or dirty. It just is. That is a point where we need to get to. Right? Because when you get to that, you're then able to give that power back to yourself. Whenever you label food as, oh my God, it's bad, right? It's junk food, you put it up on a pedestal. It has more and more control over you. Remember, what you resist will always persist. What you restrict will always persist. It's going to be the only thing that you want to eat, purely because you're telling yourself you shouldn't have it, purely because you're telling yourself you can't have it. And you may abstain from not having it for a day or two, but then you're just going to binge on it. We see this every single time. So if you're struggling with emotional eating, okay, cutting out sugar, cutting out junk food, that is no solution. In fact, when you do that, you're deepening that relationship with the poor relationship with food even more, because you're now demonizing sugar. Oh, sugar is bad for me, but I want it so much. You end up having more of it, purely because in your mind it's something that you shouldn't have. So heal that relationship with food. And I'll say this, healing your relationship with food by yourself is extremely challenging, right? Because emotions are in play. Your thinking will always dictate how you're feeling, and how you're feeling will always dictate your behavior. So if you're thinking, right? So say you're thinking, say someone has made you angry. Let's say, for example, you think, oh my God, this person is always doing this. Wow, why is she telling me this XYZ, right? That is going to make you angry or upset. That's the emotion, right? And if you're an emotional eater, what you're going to do, because you're angry and upset, what you're going to do is sit down with a box of cookies. So the problem isn't really the emotion. The problem is you're thinking about the circumstance in the first place. And I'm not asking people to always be positive. We can't do that. Life is hard. So this toxic positivity doesn't really work. What all you're trying to do is change the relationship with your thinking. No, not necessarily to change your whole thinking, because sometimes that's impossible. Our thinking stems from our experiences and all of these things. Right? So we may not be able to change our thinking, but we can absolutely change the relationship we have with our thoughts. We can choose to believe them or not to believe them. We can choose to buy into them or not to buy into them. Right? Here's the problem. Because it is our thoughts, we tend to believe them because they're ours. And because we tend to believe our thoughts, we take them as facts, right? We then allow those thoughts to lead to a certain emotion. And then that emotion is going to dictate your behavior. So the first step is to really change your thinking. And changing your thinking by yourself is really hard, because like I said, they are your thoughts. So we have a tendency to believe our thoughts because they're ours, because it's my experience, right? This is where having an outsider, having a coach can be life-changing, because now it's not only your voice in your head. Now you have somebody else to help you challenge that thinking. You have somebody else's voice in your head to say, hey, Yusra, have you noticed XYZ? Right? Someone else to be in your corner, right? To put a mirror in front of you and show you all your blind spots. Someone to help you bring awareness, because again, a lot of people don't even realize they emotionally eat. They just think they're addicted to food. You're not addicted to food. You're just using food as a crutch. And if you're someone who's constantly stressed and you don't know how to manage that stress, then obviously you're going to be constantly eating, thinking you're addicted to food. You're not addicted to food. You're not addicted to sugar. You just don't know how to handle life. So having a coach, having someone else's voice in your head can be life-changing. Look, just because you're thinking about something, it doesn't make it true. Just because you believe something about yourself based on your previous experience, it doesn't make it true. Just because your mind is telling you to do something, it doesn't mean you should do it, right? But challenging your mind in that way can be really hard. So here's my advice. If you're someone who emotionally eats, number one, try and slow down and understand your triggers. What triggers you to emotionally eat? When what happens? What scenarios in life lead to you emotionally eating? Is it the kids? Is it the husband? Is it the work? What is it? Right? The second thing that you're going to think about, okay, this is what happens when this happens. I feel a certain emotion. How can I challenge that thought, challenge that thinking, and change the relationship with your thoughts? Right? And thirdly, try to find other strategies that's going to give you the same comfort that food is going to give you. Now, different people use different things. It works for different people. For some people, journaling can help. For some people, exercising can help. For some people, going for a walk can help. For some people, just sitting with those cravings and the emotions can help. Everybody's different. It's really up down to you to figure out what is working for you. But please, the last thing you want to do is demonize food, cut stuff out, because that's not going to serve you. That is really just going to make your emotional eating worse, and the cycle of binge and restriction is not going to end. And if I can help you, if you're struggling, and if I can support you, let's have a conversation to see if any of my programs are suitable for you. Okay, that's it for me. If this has landed for you, if you have any comments, any thoughts, I'd love to hear from you. Okay, Assalamu alaikum.